Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, aka PsychSynct. My name is Jaya Hendrickson, and this video is going to be a continuation of my last two videos covering Chapter 5 in Principles of Social Psychology, looking at attitudes, changing attitudes through persuasion, and changing attitudes by changing behavior. Alright, so people have an avid interest in understanding the causes of behavior, both theirs and others. And in doing so, helps us meet the important goals of self-concern and other concern. If we can better understand how and why the people around us act the way we do, well then we have a better chance at avoiding harm from those others. And we also have a better chance at getting those others to cooperate and like us. And if we have a better understanding of the causes of our own behavior, well then we can work better to keep our behavior in line with our preferred goals and plans. Now, self-perception occurs when we use our own behavior as a guide to help us determine our own thoughts and feelings. You might have experienced the effects of self-perception. Have you ever found yourself becoming more convinced of an argument as you heard yourself making that argument? Or did you ever realize how thirsty you must have been as you quickly drank a glass of water? Research has shown that self-perception occurs regularly and in many different domains. Now, when the social situation actually causes our behavior, but we don't realize that the social situation was the cause, this phenomenon is known as insufficient justification. Insufficient justification occurs when the threat or the reward is actually sufficient to get a person to engage or avoid a behavior. But the threat or reward is insufficient to allow the person to conclude that the situation caused the behavior. And although insufficient justification leads people to sometimes like something less because they incorrectly believe that they engaged in that behavior not due to internal reasons, it's also possible that the opposite may occur. Over-justification occurs when we view our behavior as caused by the situation, leading us to discount the extent to which our behavior was actually caused by our own interest in it. And so, if we want someone to develop a strong attitude, we should use the smallest reward or punishment that's effective in producing the desired behavior. Alright, now Mark Lepper and his colleagues studied the overjustification phenomenon by leading some children to believe that they engaged in an activity for a reward rather than because they simply enjoyed it. So first, they placed some fun felt tip markers into a classroom of the children that they were studying. The children loved the markers and they immediately started playing with them. Then, the markers were taken out of the classroom and the children were given a chance to play with the markers individually in an experimental session with the researcher. At the research session, the children were randomly assigned into one of three experimental groups. The first group of children, the expected reward condition, were told that if they played with the markers, they would be given a good drawing award. A second group, the unexpected reward condition, also played with the markers and they got a reward as well. But they were not told ahead of time that they would be receiving the award. Instead, they got it as a surprise after the session. And the third group, the no reward condition, played with the markers but they didn't receive a reward. And so then the researchers placed the markers back into the classroom and observed how much the children from each of the three groups played with those markers. The fascinating result was that the children who had been led to expect a reward for playing with the markers during the experimental session played with the markers less in the second session than they had in the first session. And so expecting to receive the award at the session had undermined their initial interest in the markers. So you see here in this table, this graph, we have expected as being the lowest, then we have none as being close to unexpected as the highest. And that's the percentage of time they were playing with the markers. Alright, so the discomfort that occurs when we behave in ways that we see as inappropriate, such as when we fail to live up to our own expectations, is known as cognitive dissonance. And the discomfort of cognitive dissonance is experienced as pain, showing up in the part of the brain that's particularly sensitive to pain, the anterior cingulate cortex. Cognitive dissonance is an important social psychological principle that can explain how attitudes follow behavior in many domains of our everyday life. For instance, people who try but fail to quit smoking naturally suffer from a lowered self-esteem. But rather than accepting this negative feeling, they frequently attempt to engage in behaviors that reduce dissonance. So they may try to convince themselves that smoking is not that bad. They might say or think, my grandmother lived to be 93 and she smoked. Or they might say, I'll quit smoking next year. Or they may also try to add new consonant cognitions, such as smoking is fun and it relaxes me. And so you can see that these processes, although they may make us feel better about ourselves in the short term, they may nonetheless have some long-term negative outcomes. All right, now another time you may have experienced the negative affective state of cognitive dissonance is after you've made an important and irrevocable decision. Imagine that you're about to buy a new car and you've narrowed your decision down to a small new car or a larger but much cheaper used car. Now imagine, however, that you finally decide to buy the larger car because you don't think that you can afford the brand new car. So that night you're lying in bed and you're wondering about your decision. Although you've enjoyed driving around the big car that you just purchased, you're worried about rising gas prices, the negative impact of a big car on the environment, and the potential for having to pay for repair costs. Have you made the right decision? This buyer's remorse can be interpreted as post-decisional dissonance, and that's feeling of regret that may occur after making an important decision. In a 1956 study, Jack Brem posed as a representative of a consumer testing service and asked women to rate the attractiveness and desirability of several appliances, such as toasters and electric coffee makers. Each woman was told that as a reward for having participated in the survey, they could have one of the appliances as a gift. And so they were given a choice between the two products that they found to be about same in desirability and attractiveness. And after they made their decision, the appliance was wrapped up and given to them. Then, 20 minutes later, each woman was asked to re-rate all of the products. So as you can see in post-decisional dissonance, Brem found that the women who rated the appliance that they had chosen been given a gift higher than they had the first time. And the women also lowered their rating of the appliance they might have chosen but decided to reject. And so these results are, of course, consistent with the principles of cognitive dissonance. Post-decisional dissonance is reduced by focusing on the positive aspects of the chosen product and the negative aspects of the rejected product. Okay, so salespeople often make use of psychological principles, including self-perception and cognitive dissonance, to encourage people to buy their products. And this is often done in ways that seem less than completely open or ethical. One approach based on this idea is to get people to move slowly in the desired direction, such that they commit to a smaller act first. The idea is that it'll be relatively easy to get people to engage in a small behavior, after which the perception of that initial behavior will change their attitudes, making it more likely that they'll engage in a more costly behavior later. And so this describes the foot in the door technique, which refers to a persuasion attempt in which we first get the target to accept a rather minor request, and then we ask for a larger request. Now another approach based on the attitude follow behavior idea, and one which is also often used by cunning salesmen, is known as the lowball technique. In this case, the salesperson promises the customer something desirable, such as a low price on a car, with the intention of getting the person to imagine themselves engaging in that behavior, in this instance, purchasing the vehicle. After the customer has committed to purchasing the car at the low price, the salesperson then indicates that he or she cannot sell the car at that price. And so in this case, people are more likely to buy the car at a higher price than they would have been had they first been offered it at the high price. Backing out of a commitment seems wrong, and it may threaten our self-esteem, even if that commitment was obtained in an unethical way. Now, a close alternative to lowballing is known as the bait and switch technique. And this occurs when someone advertises a product at a very low price, and then when you visit the store to buy the product, you learn that the product you wanted has been sold out. So as an example, a car dealership may advertise a low-priced car in a newspaper ad, and then when you go to the dealership to buy the car, they won't have that car, at least at that price. And again, people are more likely to buy an alternative, higher-priced product after they already committed themselves to the purchase than they would have been without the original information of the low-priced car. And so once you imagine yourself owning the car, your attitude towards the car becomes more positive, making the idea of giving it up more costly and also making it more likely that you'll buy the car. Alright folks, this is going to conclude my third video covering Chapter 5 in Principles of Social Psychology. Some of the things we looked at were exploring attitudes, changing attitudes through persuasion, and changing attitudes by changing behavior. I hope you guys learned some stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.